Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Modi replies on the motion of thanks to the President's address in the lower house of Parliament and says that the world is looking at the country with pride. All of our decisions had only one measure, he says, India first. And the Lok Sabha is adjourned sine die. Stampede at Hathras in India's Uttar Pradesh claims many lives. Prime Minister Modi expresses condolences, assures all help. Probe has been ordered. The World Meteorological Agency says that Beryl sets a tone for a very dangerous hurricane season. Hurricane Beryl churns towards Jamaica, bringing floods. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu releases a video statement, says that he won't stop the war in Gaza before achieving all goals. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi replied to the motion of thanks to India's in the Indian Parliament in the lower house, to the President's address, that is. And during his 130-minute-long speech, the Prime Minister tore into the false allegations of the opposition. He highlighted the achievements of his government over the last 10 years, and he laid the path that his government is going to take over the next 5 years. The Lok Sabha has been adjourned sine die after the culmination of the Prime Minister's reply to the motion of thanks to the President's address and also to the motion of thanks being adopted by the House. Now, DD India correspondent Debyendra Mandal has this report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi entered the Lok Sabha amidst a roaring cheer from the Treasury bench on Tuesday. He delivered a 140 minutes long speech in the lower house of Indian Parliament, tearing down the false allegations made by opposition parties and enlisting the achievements of the BJP-led NDA government over the last 10 years. During his speech, Prime Minister Narendra Modi thanked the people of India for giving his government a third mandate. He also said that he would work even harder for the welfare of people of India.
हमारी तीसरी टर्म में इसका मतलब है हम 3 गुना स्पीड से काम करेंगे। हमारी तीसरी टर्म का मतलब है हम 3 गुना शक्ति लगाएंगे। हमारी तीसरी टर्म का मतलब है हम देशवासियों को 3 गुना परिणाम ला करके देंगे।
PM said that the people of India has given a mandate against the Congress and in favor of the NDA. He highlighted on the floor of the House that Rahul Gandhi of the Congress is out on bail and Congress has taken refuge with lies.
24 के चुनाव में कांग्रेस के लिए भी इस देश की जनता ने जनादेश दिया है और इस देश की जनादेश है कि आप वहीं बैठिए। कांग्रेस के इतिहास का ये पहला मौका है जब लगातार 3 बार कांग्रेस 100 का आंकड़ा पार नहीं कर पाई है।
In an unprecedented manner, the Lok Sabha was held at ransom during the PM's speech in a move never seen before. The opposition parties jumped to the well of the House while the PM was speaking. While the Speaker kept reprimanding the opposition for their unparliamentary behavior, the PM requested the Speaker to look into the matter seriously. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also moved a resolution in the House seconded by Union Home Minister Amit Shah, condemning the behavior of the opposition parties. While the BJP leaders accused the opposition of taking to hooliganism, as they did not have facts to counter PM Modi.
After the fiery speech of the Prime Minister on the floor of the lower house of Parliament, the Speaker has adjourned the Lok Sabha sine die. But all eyes tomorrow on the upper house, which is the Rajya Sabha, on the Prime Minister's reply to the motion of thanks on the presidential address to the Parliament. With camera person Keshav, this is Dibyendu Model from New Delhi for DD India.
Well, the BJP leader Ravi Shankar Prasad has lashed out at the leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, for his unruly behavior during the Prime Minister's speech in the lower house of Parliament.
Honorable, the Prime Minister was interrupted so badly by the opposition, led by the new leader of opposition, designed not to allow him to speak. I completely commend the Prime Minister, the manner in which he spoke for 2.5 hours, outlined his vision of development for the country. But it is indeed a matter of great regret and also shame that you talk of democracy, you talk of constitution, you talk of your freedom being curtailed. On the very first session of the 18th Lok Sabha, you don't allow the Prime Minister to speak.
In a tragic incident, many people have died and several others have been injured in a stampede at a religious gathering in Hathras in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The State Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has ordered the district administration there to expedite relief efforts. A high-level committee has also been constituted to inquire into the cause of the incident. Prime Minister Modi has announced an ex gratia of 2 lakh rupees or 200,000 Indian rupees for the next of kin of each deceased in the mishap. The injured will be given 50,000 rupees. While addressing the lower house, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also extended his condolences to those who have lost their lives.
यूपी के हाथरस में जो भगदड़ हुई उसमें अनेकों लोगों की दुखद मृत्यु होने की जानकारी आ रही है। जिन लोगों की इस हादसे में जान गई है, मैं उनके प्रति अपनी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं। मैं सभी घायलों के जल्द से जल्द ठीक होने की कामना करता हूं। राज्य सरकार की देखरेख में प्रशासन राहत और बचाव कार्य में जुटा हुआ है।
The German ambassador to India, Dr. Philipp Ackermann, in a social media post on X, condoled the loss of lives in the tragedy in Hathras. In the post, Dr. Ackermann said, and I quote, "Deeply saddened about the tragic events in Hathras. My condolences to the families that lost their loved ones. We hope that help quickly reaches the injured." The ambassador of France to India, Thierry Mathou, in a social media post on X, has expressed deep condolences on the loss of lives following the tragic stampede in Uttar Pradesh's Hathras district. He says that France expresses its deepest condolences to the bereaved families of the victims and wishes the injured a speedy recovery. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a social media post, congratulated Dick Schoof of on assuming the office of the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. And the Prime Minister looks forward to closely working together to advance India-Netherlands partnership, including in the areas of renewable energy, water management, agriculture, mobility, new and emerging technology. India's External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar will represent India at the annual summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO. This is taking place in Kazakhstan's capital Astana from Thursday. The summit is in fact expected to focus on regional security and also ways to boost connectivity and trade.
The 24th meeting of the SCO Council of Heads of State will begin under the presidency of Kazakhstan on Wednesday. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will be in Astana on Thursday to attend the summit. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization leaders are expected to review the organization's activities over the past 2 decades and discuss the state and prospects of multilateral cooperation. Topical issues of regional and international importance are also expected to be discussed at the meeting. India's priorities at the SCO are shaped by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of secure SCO. Secure stands for security, economic cooperation, connectivity, unity, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and environmental protection. India, under its first ever presidency of the SCO, hosted the 23rd meeting of the SCO Council of Heads of State on the 4th of July last year in a virtual format. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, let's take a look at other stories making the news around the world. The Netherlands has a new Prime Minister after 14 years as King Willem Alexander swore in the country's new government on Tuesday. Although Geert Wilders' anti-immigration party won the most number of seats in the last year election, it took over 7 months to form a government. Now, during their meeting in Warsaw, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, they committed to jointly ensuring the security of Europe's borders amid heightened tensions with Belarus and Russia's ongoing attacks on Ukraine, which have led to frequent NATO deployments in Poland. The US government has imposed trade restrictions on 6 companies, citing their involvement in training China's military. The companies located in China, South Africa and the UAE and also UK, they have been added to the US's restricted entry list or restricted entity list, according to an official notice. The government of New Zealand plans to introduce a bill that will mandate digital technology platforms to pay local media companies for news content. Canada had introduced a similar bill in 2023. Still to come here on DD India News Hour, we're going to get you an update on the second round of French elections to take place on the 7th of July. And we also look at the UK polls, which are scheduled for Thursday. And Kenyans are still up in arms against their government's decision to raise taxes. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Candidates in France on Tuesday faced a deadline to register for the runoff round of a high-stakes parliamentary election on July 7th as President Emmanuel Macron's centrist camp and left-wing alliance scrambled to prevent the far right from taking power. Pollsters calculated the first round put the National Rally, or the RN, on track to anything between 250 to 300 seats. But that was before the tactical withdrawals and also cross-party calls for voters to back whichever candidate was best placed to defeat the local RN rival. Dheeraj Das reports.
With only a couple of days to go before the second round of the French parliamentary elections scheduled for 7th of July, the National Rally's opponents are scrambling to keep the far right from obtaining an absolute majority in the National Assembly. Official results suggest Marine Le Pen's anti-immigration nationalist party National Rally stands a good chance of winning a majority in the lower house of parliament for the first time, but the outcome remains uncertain amid the complex voting system and political tactics. Campaigning continued ahead of the second round of voting in the French parliamentary election. The National Rally's rivals are scrambling to keep it from getting an absolute majority. As the political camps continued strategizing ahead of the second round of voting, French far-right leader Marine Le Pen on Tuesday insisted that an absolute majority was still attainable for her National Rally party.
Of course, we cannot accept to go into the government if we cannot act. What our voters ask is to change the policies that were put in place. If we cannot change them, and if we accept to go into the government just to sit down on the minister's chair, if we cannot act, that would be, for me, the worst betrayal we can do to our voters.
Marine Le Pen's National Rally party came out well ahead in Sunday's first round of voting after President Emmanuel Macron's gamble on a snap election backfired, leaving his centrist camp in a lowly third place behind a hastily formed left-wing alliance. Pollsters calculated the first round put the RN on track for anything between 250 to 300 seats. Now let's understand the poll process of France. A total of 76 candidates were elected to France's parliament in the first round of vote, of which 39 represented the National Rally, 32 were from the New Popular Front and 2 from Macron's alliance. If no candidate reaches 50% in the first round, the top 2 contenders automatically qualify for the second round, as well as all those with 12.5% of registered voters. In the second round of voting on July 7th, whosoever wins the most votes takes the constituency. For an absolute majority, a party needs 289. According to local media estimates, some 180 plus candidates have confirmed that they will not stand in Sunday's second round for the 577-seat National Parliament. However, the electoral system can make it hard to estimate the precise distribution of seats in the 577-seat National Assembly, and the final outcome will not be known until the end of voting on July 7th. Bureau Report, DD India.
And to put into context more about the poll process and what's expected, we have Ross Cullen joining us from Paris with more. Ross, how likely is the winner of the first round, able to sustain that momentum in the second round?
It's very unlikely that the National Rally will suffer a disastrous performance in the polls. They are very likely to win the second round with the greatest number of seats. They may fall short of an absolute majority, though, but they are likely to sustain that momentum, which has seen them into first place in the first round on the 30th of June. They got more than 30% of the vote in the first round. More than a third of French electorate are choosing to vote for the far-right populist nationalists, and they are likely to sustain that pressure, to sustain that position, and come out top in the second round decisive vote on Sunday the 7th of July. But the question still remains whether they can win a relative majority or actually gain that outright majority that would allow them to choose the Prime Minister, who would be party leader 28-year-old Jordan Bardella.
Ross, also, what do these results mean for President Macron's future?
Well, he has been humiliated by the results of the first rounds in the general election. Certainly his gamble to call a snap election backfired on him. His party's been humbled, very likely to end up third place, whereas just 3 weeks ago, before the election, they were in first place as the largest party in Parliament with 171 MPs. He called the snap election, and we are likely to see more than about 100 of them lose their seats as a result of his election. So he has had a direct impact on his own party, calling the snap election. He will be feeling the pressure when it comes to the second round, and he may even have to go through the unthinkable, which would be to install a power-sharing cohabitation government with a prime minister working with him, but a prime minister from the far right.
Roscollon in Paris, thanks very much. Wednesday brings to an end also campaigning for UK's general elections. Voting is scheduled for the 4th of July. Now, political parties are making their final appeals across the British Isles, urging supporters to vote for them. And the UK Parliament, it consists of two houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And voting, of course, is taking place for the House of Commons, which comprises 650 seats or 650 members. The majority mark is 326 to form a government. Syed Absarul Hassan tells us the story.
There is just one day left until the UK's general elections campaign draws to a close. Voting will take place on July 4th, when the fate of Britain's leading politicians will be decided by the voters. Across the spectrum, political parties are making their final appeals, urging supporters to cast their ballots. Incumbent Prime Minister Rishi Sunak shot votes among whirling robots in a retail distribution centre on Tuesday. It began the penultimate day before Thursday's vote in a vast Ocado warehouse located north of London, observing robots pick items for delivery. Once on the verge of resignation after devastating local elections lost in 2021, Britain's Labour Party leader Keir Starmer is now poised to win the July 4th election. Most opinion polls have favoured the Labour Party in the snap election. While campaigning in Nottinghamshire, England, Starmer presented a positive vision to voters.
We're campaigning with a positive case to take to the electorate, all about change. And what a contrast to the increasingly desperate negative campaign that the Tories are running. They've literally got nothing to say to the electorate as we go into Thursday. We've got plenty to say, because this campaign is about change, it's about turning the page and rebuilding our country.
The UK Parliament has a two-house system composed of the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Members of the Parliament are elected to the House of Commons, which consists of 650 seats. A party needs to win at least 50% of seats, that is 326, to secure a majority in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister is typically the leader of the party that commands this majority. The monarch, currently King Charles III, invites the leader of the majority party to form a government. Syed Absarul Hassan reporting for DD India.
And Stuart Smith now joins us from London with more on the story. Well, Stuart, are there any restrictions on campaigning as the election date draws near?
We're already in the 6-week purdah period, as it's known, which is the time when the government and local councils cannot implement or announce any new policies in order not to try to unduly change the outcome of the election. But we're about to enter the most sensitive period. On Wednesday will be the last full day of campaigning, when polls open at 7 a.m. UK time. Then campaigners must stop, and the rules are very strict. Broadcasters must not air anything that could end up changing voters' minds over the course of the day in order to try to create a as fair playing field as possible. So a voter that gets up and votes early at 7 a.m. in the morning will have the same attitude to the election as one that votes later in the day. That purdah period, though, coming under scrutiny from a host of IT experts this week who have signed a letter suggesting that they believe broadcasters should be able to counter misinformation on the election day itself. They fear that if there are any deep fake videos or significant publishing of misinformation on other online platforms perhaps, then no broadcaster would be in any position to debunk them, and that could end up changing people's minds. So the new realities of a world in which social media exists butting up against traditional UK election protection systems.
Stuart, also, how influential are these pre-poll surveys which everyone seems to be quoting? Do people generally follow their lead?
Yeah, the first thing to say is that people do tend to follow the lead, but the second thing is that they're not necessarily accurate. Every election over the past few decades has suffered from deficiencies, and one pollster, a respected one who managed to call out pollsters before and correctly predict the outcomes, has suggested that the same is happening again, that the Conservative defeat is being overestimated and the Labour win is being overestimated as well. He still thinks, this analyst, that there will be a large Labour majority, but suggests there should be caution amongst pollsters that think this is a done deal. It's also the message that the leader of the Labour Party has been spreading to his activists, that there should be no complacency here, that Labour have lost elections before when things seem to be going well and done worse than expected close to election day itself. But while complacency could be something the Labour Party is warning against, apathy is something the Conservative Party are trying to warn against. They say that actually, the Prime Minister said earlier, 130,000 votes could make a difference if Conservative voters choose to vote rather than either stay at home or vote for another party. So Prime Minister Rishi Sunak urging people to go out and vote for the Conservatives, even though the polls suggest they are in no chance of securing a comeback.
Stuart Smith in London, thanks very much. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel won't stop the war in Gaza before achieving all its goals. He was referring to an article in a US daily quoting security officials saying that Israel's military leadership wants a ceasefire with Hamas if a bigger war breaks out on its northern front with Lebanon. Israel is under pressure from Washington to end the loss of human life and wind down its military offensive after nearly 9 months. But it does not want Hamas to charge, or it doesn't want Hamas to be in charge of Gaza after the war.
Unnamed officials are briefing the New York Times today. They say Israel will be willing to end war before achieving all of its goals. I don't know who those unnamed officials are, but I am here to convey unequivocally that this is not going to happen. We will end the war only after we achieve all of its goals, including the elimination of Hamas and release of all our hostages.
Protests in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, continued on Tuesday, and other cities as well across the country after protesters demanded the resignation of President William Ruto. The protests follow a week of deadly clashes over a $2.7 billion tax hike that is proposed in the finance bill. DD India's Leon Senyenje reports from Kampala.
Kenyan police fired tear gas at protesters in the capital Nairobi on Tuesday as protesters have remained unrelenting in their demands. They are demanding changes in what they have described as rampant corruption and governance under President Ruto. They are also demanding that the president steps down. The protests have since expanded into a national movement. Hundreds of protesters in the coastal city of Mombasa were also reported to have staged demonstrations. There were protests in other towns of Kajiado, Kisumu, as well as Nakuru. An internet outcry against the roughly $2.7 billion in tax increases in a planned finance bill sparked the protests last week. Kenya's National Commission on Human Rights says at least 39 people have so far died in the protests. Leon Senyenje reporting in Kampala, Uganda for DD India.
Well, still to come here on DD India News Hour. We'll get you updates on extreme weather events from flash floods to wildfires. Hurricane Beryl has strengthened into a potentially catastrophic Category 5 storm. The US President Biden says that the SCOTUS, or Supreme Court of the United States, the ruling on the presidential immunity has set a dangerous precedent.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. Prime Minister Modi replies to the motion of thanks to the President's address in the lower house of Parliament, and he says that the world is looking at India with pride. And I quote, all of our decisions had only one measure, India first, is what he said. The Lok Sabha has been adjourned sine die. Stampede at Hathras in India's Uttar Pradesh has claimed many lives. Prime Minister Modi has expressed condolences and assured all possible help. A probe has been ordered. The World Meteorological Agency says that Beryl sets the tone for a very dangerous hurricane season. Hurricane Beryl churns towards Jamaica, bringing floods. And we'll be returning now to our story on the Prime Minister's reply to the motion of thanks to the President's address in the lower house of India's Parliament, the Lok Sabha. The Prime Minister covered a wide range of topics in his reply and taking on a lot of the accusations made by the opposition. We are joined by Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist, to put things into perspective for us. Mr. Iyer, we first look at the opposition disturbance which was happening largely throughout the Prime Minister's speech. That was not in good taste. Clearly, setting a bad precedent for this session.
Indeed, Mark, I think with this new Lok Sabha, the 18th Lok Sabha, and this was the first of the occasion when, yesterday when Rahul Gandhi was speaking and when other members of the opposition were speaking, the treasury benches heard them in silence. So if at all they wanted, they could have always countered if any points they wished to counter. But then to come into the well of the house and with Rahul Gandhi himself being named by the speaker that he was encouraging his party members to come into the well, I don't think this augurs well for the new house. And we also saw the Prime Minister saying that this kind of, we cannot dismiss this kind of behavior as a childish act. Rather, the chair must be very firm because this is not the way the houses can, the house will function. And Speaker himself warned the opposition members that this cannot go on like this for the next 5 years. But very broadly, if you see the Prime Minister's reply, making it very clear that the NDA has got the mandate and this mandate is for 5 years, and that the larger goal of Viksit Bharat, that is going to be rolled out, and the Prime Minister made it clear this is his third term, and this third term will mean that efforts of the government, the efforts of his ministers, and his own efforts will be 3 times more than what was put in the last 10 years, because India has to grow, India has to develop, and it has a huge potential, and people are expecting this government to meet their aspiration. Mark.
Also, Mr. Iyer, the Prime Minister did respond on the NEET examination issue. He said that the guilty will be punished and remedial measures have been taken. You cannot play with the lives and the future of the youth. So he's come forward and he's spoken on the subject.
Yeah, because it was the very fact that it was mentioned in the President's address, the joint address to both the houses of Parliament. It contained a reference to this NEET leak, which clearly showed the government was willing to discuss this in the course of the motion of thanks debate. But for whatever reasons, Rahul Gandhi, as the new leader of the opposition, was insisting there should be a separate debate. So that's why you saw the first day being wasted in adjournment. Whereas in this very debate, since the President's address mentions the NEET and the government resolute decision to see that the culprits are brought to book and any changes that are necessary to ensure the security protocol is undertaken. And this was mentioned in the President's address. And today the Prime Minister also made it very clear that actions are taking place. CBI has been conducting raids, arresting several people. And we have seen some of the people who have been arrested are principal, even vice principal and teachers of some schools, private schools. So I think the Prime Minister was very clear in which direction the whole probe is headed for, and how the government will come down very heavily those who are breaching security protocol and indulging in this kind of practice.
Also, the leader of the opposition yesterday had brought out a rather narrow-minded view of Hinduism, and Prime Minister today said that the country will not forget Rahul Gandhi's remarks on Hinduism for centuries. He's put it into context, and he said that these are deeply hurtful comments, and they will be remembered from time to come.
Indeed, Mark, the Prime Minister pointed out that kind of a broad generalization about any particular faith, and in this case here, that Hindu Hinsa, he was saying, Rahul Gandhi was saying. So of course, later Rahul Gandhi tried to say that, no, I am only referring to the BJP and RSS, that they do not represent Hindu. But when he mentioned it, he didn't speak it that way, which left open to interpretation that why should Rahul Gandhi be making such a statement. So what the Prime Minister pointed out, whether this was by design or this is by coincidence, but definitely there is a move afoot where to show the Hindu tradition, Hindu, or even the Sanatan Dharma, because he also referred to the allies of the Congress, particularly the DMK, which has been talking in a very derogatory manner about the Hindu practices and faith, and the Sanatan Dharma in particular.
Yes, Mr. Iyer, also we look at some of the some things in more detail. The Prime Minister also accused the Congress of talking about lies, using lies as a weapon in a sense in politics. All the promises made, assistance of 8,500 rupees per month to women, to every woman. Also about EVMs, the Constitution, reservation issue. He talked about Rafale, certain public sector units, HAL, LIC and all that, and banks. How do you view all this and the Prime Minister's response in a nutshell?
Well, Mark, the Prime Minister wanted to put the record straight on all these issues, because even during the Lok Sabha campaign, it was made out as if that BJP wanted to amend the constitution and to do away with the reservation for the SC, ST and OBC. This campaign actually hurt the BJP politically in some constituencies. That's why the Prime Minister said, look, this whole Congress campaign in the Lok Sabha election has been based on a false accusation that the BJP was out to completely deform the constitution and do away with the provisions of affirmative action for the poor, particularly for the Dalits. And the Prime Minister pointed out, even now an attempt is being made to fake a mandate for the Congress, which is not there. The fact that BJP managed to get 240 plus and that NDA was 295 were clear to show that the mandate is for an NDA government and a third term for the Prime Minister. Whereas the narrative has been sought to be made out as if it is, that this government doesn't have a mandate, the Prime Minister doesn't have a mandate, and that the Congress is somehow working on some kind of a strategy to capture power. So he says this whole thing is a fakery that is being used, and which an attempt is being made to show as if that this government does not have a majority. Well, this government does have a majority. It is well past the halfway mark with the NDA support. So therefore, there is no ground for continuing this kind of a false narrative. Mark.
Yes, also Mr. Iyer, not only about the NDA at the center, he said that the NDA has also come to power in some of the states after this election. And he also did talk about, the big idea of a developed India, that every citizen looks for ample opportunities that are available. India is respected by the whole world. So, the mandate means something, both at the central level as well as the state level, but it also means something to the world.
Definitely, Mark, what the Prime Minister was particularly, highlighting was the BJP went to the people on its manifesto, which pledged to work for a Viksit Bharat, a grand India with set objectives. And the Prime Minister, the first part of his speech, if you look today, was focused on those Viksit Bharat goals and how committed he himself as the Prime Minister and the BJP as the ruling party in the NDA-led combination, and how they are committed to achieving some tangible results in the next 5 years. Because 2047 is when India will complete 100 years of independence. And there are set goals in covering every sector that has been highlighted in the BJP manifesto. So what the Prime Minister said was that he himself is personally committed that these results are achieved, people get the opportunity that they richly deserve to realize their potential, so that the country as a whole marches forward in a much faster way, whether it's infrastructure, education, agriculture, shipping, fisheries, take any sector. There are set goals that have to be rolled out, and people cannot wait any longer.
Right, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Shekhar Iyer. Thank you for joining us and throwing light on the Prime Minister's response to the motion of thanks to the President's address in the lower house of Parliament. The Prime Minister will be speaking in the upper house tomorrow. Now, it's been an unusually fierce and fearful start to the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season, as Hurricane Beryl has strengthened into a potentially catastrophic Category 5 storm. The World Meteorological Organization says that Beryl has set the tone for a very dangerous hurricane season ahead. And Nick Harper now joins us from Washington, D.C. with more on the preparations for that. Nick, how serious is a hurricane season in the U.S. and in the area surrounding it, and how long does it last?
Well, Mark, usually we'd see the hurricane season last 6 months, starting at the beginning of June, running through to the end of November. But it is slightly unusual to be seeing the type of hurricane that we're seeing at this time of year. That's largely because the peak activity takes place between the middle of August and the middle of October, and particularly intensifies around the beginning to middle of September. What we're seeing here with Beryl is a hurricane that is already shattering records in terms of how quickly it's intensified. The fact that it's a Category 5 storm taking place this early in the season, taking place in June, these are all things that have never happened before, and that's really why it is worrying scientists. They're saying that this is setting a precedent for future hurricane seasons that they feel will be particularly bad. We've heard from the World Meteorological Organization saying it's setting a very dangerous tone, also saying that there's going to be a very, very active and very dangerous hurricane season in the Atlantic. They say all of this is due to much warmer temperatures. Normally the temperatures of the ocean would not be this hot this early in the season. That, of course, being linked to climate change. But scientists are saying because the temperatures of the ocean is as hot as it currently is, that's why we're seeing this Category 5 storm passing through. And the fact that it's hitting the area that it's hitting, the Eastern Caribbean region, and then moving towards Mexico, that is also unusual. So a whole range of factors taking place at the same time, but all of it very much worrying scientists about what could potentially happen during the rest of the hurricane season, but also what it might mean for future hurricane seasons in future years.
Also, Nick, what kind of precautions do people take or are expected to take now that Beryl, as you said, has set a very bad precedent for the hurricane season?
Well, in terms of what communities can do, just bear in mind that this hurricane is passing through often very small, remote islands. Some of them are rural communities that are simply not set up for storms of these magnitude. We've seen some communities being evacuated from their homes, being put in storm shelters where those are available, but we're dealing with 250 kilometre an hour winds. and that is also bringing intense storm surges and flooding to those areas. We've heard from the St Vincent and Grenadines Prime Minister, who has talked about intense destruction in their island communities, saying that around 90% of the homes have either been destroyed or partially damaged. We are likely to see this hurricane now moving on to Jamaica, likely to be passing over the island on Wednesday. The Prime Minister there is telling people to take the hurricane as a serious threat, also telling them to seek higher and safer ground, and warning them that if they are on the coast to move inland, because we could see some potentially life-threatening storm surges within those areas.
Nick Harper in Washington, D.C., thanks very much. From flash floods to wildfires, the world is experiencing an increase in extreme weather events. And experts and scientists alike, they are of the view that climate change is affecting weather patterns worldwide, leading to diverse and unexpected conditions, as this report tells us.
Start to the 2024's Atlantic hurricane season. Hurricane Beryl strengthened on Monday into a potentially catastrophic Category 5 storm as it moved across the eastern Caribbean, putting Jamaica under its path after downing power lines and flooding streets elsewhere. Beryl has left a trail of destruction in its wake in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Union Island has been devastated. The reports that I have received indicate that 90% of the houses have been severely damaged or destroyed. Their roofs, structures. The Union Island Airport's roof is gone. It's no more.
The impact in its path has prompted other nations to issue warnings and prepare for the worst. Jamaica issued a hurricane warning, while tropical storm warnings were in effect for parts of the southern coasts of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Scientists believe climate change probably contributed to the rapid pace of its formation. And that is not all. North America is bracing with 2 storms at the same time. While at coast of southern Mexico, Tropical Storm Chris caused minor damage after making landfall in southern Veracruz state on Sunday. Torrential rains are causing widespread destruction in China also. Milwa River is now flowing above the danger mark, having reached the highest water level recorded since 1954. In India too, the monsoon, while bringing relief from intense heat, has wreaked mayhem in many states. Normal life has been disrupted in Gujarat, Jharkhand and northeastern states. Brahmaputra continues to flow above danger level following widespread rains in Assam. Indian Meteorological Department has issued orange warning for Delhi, Punjab, Himachal, Haryana, West Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. The alert corresponds to a prediction of very heavy rainfall between 115 to 205 millimeters in 24 hours. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, still to come here on DD India News Hour. France and Portugal have booked their places in the quarterfinals of the Euros. And Brazil and informed Colombia are going to meet in the Copa America in North California. Also, an Indian team is bound for Zimbabwe, I beg your pardon, for a T20 international series.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, protesters gathered at the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. after it had recognized that former presidents have immunity from prosecution for certain actions that they had taken in office. The U.S. President Joe Biden calls the decision a dangerous precedent. And the U.S. Supreme Court, in a landmark 6-3 ruling, had recognized for the first time, some level of presidential immunity. This report gives us some perspective.
Good evening.
US President Joe Biden is concerned that the US Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity is setting a dangerous precedent. This even though he is the incumbent president and will also benefit from its ambit. He called it a disservice to the American people.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
The big concern for Democrats is that the decision makes it highly unlikely for cases against Trump to go to trial before the 5th November election. The ruling will make it far more challenging for the special prosecutor Jack Smith to pursue a case against Trump for alleged election subversion.
So it's going to be a narrowing, an undercutting of Jack Smith's case. Not a complete ending of it, but certainly a much tighter rope he has to walk to have Trump held criminally accountable.
The US Supreme Court found on Monday that Trump cannot be prosecuted for any actions within his constitutional powers as president, but he can be for private acts. The landmark 6-3 ruling recognizes for the first time any form of presidential immunity from prosecution, but has it opened the door for presidential autocracy?
You're veering more in at least the potential for an authoritarian or dictatorial regime, which is of course what many people are afraid Donald Trump will do.
The Supreme Court of the United States threw out a lower court's decision that had rejected Trump's claim of immunity from federal criminal charges involving his efforts to undo his 2020 election loss to Joe Biden. The 6 conservative justices were in the majority, while its 3 liberal members dissented. Biden is running for re-election against Trump and has been sharply critical of his rival's actions related to the January 6, 2021 raid on the US Capitol, where Trump supporters acted on trumpeted belief that the 2020 election was stolen. Bureau Report, DD India.
The 2 largest parties in the Federal Parliament of Nepal, the NC as well as the CPN-UML, they've agreed to share a power equation aiming to form a new government under the leadership of the UML chair KP Sharma Oli. Now, under this agreement, it's expected to be finalized. The UML chairman Oli will lead the government initially for the first half of the remaining term of the current parliament. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Nepal, Narayan Kaji Shrestha, addressed a seminar on the transferring knowledge on bilateral and multilateral negotiations. The Deputy Prime Minister pointed out that geopolitical developments need to be assessed, keeping national interests at the center or at the core. And he emphasized that as the country grapples with new critical issues and geopolitical rivalries, a diplomat's role becomes more important to work together for global peace, stability and prosperity. Time to take a look at other stories making the news in India. The Union Minister for Coal and Mines, G. Kishan Reddy, inaugurated the District Mineral Foundation Gallery at Shastri Bhavan in New Delhi. And this new gallery is going to showcase a variety of products which are created by women self-help groups of the DMF Keonjhar Koraput from Odisha. The Ministry of Defence has inked an MOU to set up a testing facility in the unmanned aerial system, electronic warfare and electro-optics domains in Tamil Nadu Defence Industrial Corridor. The MOU was exchanged between senior officials of the Defence Ministry and the Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corporation Limited in the presence of the Defence Secretary Giridhar Armane in New Delhi. 2 new cases of the Zika virus were reported at Pune in the Indian state of Maharashtra. A total of 6 infected cases, including 2 pregnant women, have been reported till now. Officials are making efforts to control its outbreak and to prevent more infections. 5 Naxalites were killed in an encounter with security personnel in Chhattisgarh in Narayanpur in that district on Tuesday. This gunfight took place in the forest area when a joint team of personnel from different security forces, this team was out on an anti-Naxal operation. Let's get to the sports news now. And five-time world champions Brazil and the informed Colombia are meeting in North California in a highly anticipated Copa America clash. Colombia are arguably the hottest team in the Americas, with an impressive streak of 10 consecutive wins and undefeated in their last 25 matches. Their last defeat was, in fact, 2 years ago, and that was 1-0 to Argentina. Now they're beating the five-time world champion Brazil, would send a statement that South America has a new force to reckon with. Under the guidance of the manager Dorival Jr., Brazil's Copa America debut was disappointing, a goalless draw against Costa Rica. That was their fifth straight competitive game without a win. Now it's the worst run in 23 years for the Brazilians. They bounced back with a 4-1 win over Paraguay thanks to a stellar performance by the forward Vinicius Jr. The Indian squad for the T20 International Series against Zimbabwe have departed from India, and the first match of the 5-game series will be played on July 6 in Harare. The last T20 International will be played on July 14 at the same venue, which will host all the 5 games. The Indian squad includes Abhishek Sharma, Mukesh Kumar, Ruturaj Gaikwad, Avesh Khan, Riyan Parag, among others. The head coach of this team would be the former Indian cricketer and the National Cricket Academy chief, VVS Lakshman. Meanwhile, in the other match, France secured a nervy 1-0 win over the disappointing Belgium on Monday to advance into the quarterfinals. We're talking about the Euros now, despite another poor show in their misfiring of forwards. France made most of the running in the KG game, but they were reckless with their finishing until a nice combination of passes finally created space for Kolo Muani to bundle his shot in. France will now meet Portugal in the quarterfinals in Hamburg on Friday. That's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get the latest news and updates from India and across the world. This is on the DD India mobile app. That app is available on Android and iOS platforms, and you can just download it by scanning the QR code that you just saw on your screen. But we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lin. From all of us here in Delhi, thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.